Alright, so after the Pixar Odyssey that I went on last summer, I decided right after that to watch every Dreamworks movie, and it ended up taking me 10 months, so my apologies for that. Actually, I'm not that sorry about it, but I probably should have watched them faster. But anyways, I made it through all of them, and I gotta say this one was not quite as fun. It was definitely it was still fun. I made it through. I'm glad I made it through all the way, but DreamWorks just has so many bad movies and so many good movies too. It's so weird how inconsistent they are. I don't really understand how they do that. However, I now have 47 new movies to rank. I did not watch Megamind 2 or Joseph King of Dreams because I don't hate myself that much. So let's rock and roll and review all of these movies. So first up we got Ants, and honestly I kinda like this movie. I think it's kinda okay. I think it's a bit better than a lot of other people on YouTube are giving it credit for. It's definitely not good. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Personally, I think it's about the same as Bug's Life. And I know the animation is a lot worse than Bug's Life, but I like how it actually tried to have a more mature story. I think the story in Bug's Life is very overrated, and a lot of people kind of give Bug's Life a pass because it's released the same time as Pixar's Prime, when really it's not an amazing movie. But I do think there's a lot of stuff about this movie that isn't good. Some of the jokes are really weird. I kind of thought they were funny, but they were a little bit off-putting. The animation, despite I know it's old, but it really has not aged well. It is a massive step down from A Bug's Life, and it's kind of impossible to avoid this comparison. But for being released around the same time, this is a pretty big downgrade. And also the story really isn't that great, despite having more interesting themes and messages than Bug's Life. And I actually like the climax a lot. Like the tower climb, I think, is pretty engaging. Most of the movie still drags pretty badly. It's just, the awkward guy bug wooing the princess bug, this unlikely duo that goes on an adventure to save the day and, stop the villain. It's pretty basic despite having some interesting ideas, so I still wouldn't call this movie good, but I like the ideas that it has, and I wouldn't say I hated watching it. And I would say it's about on par with Bug's Life. Alright, I am not a religious person, but The Prince of Egypt is still the most beautiful thing I've seen in a long time. I wouldn't say it's better than The Incredibles or WALL-E, but aside from that, this thing is pretty much perfect. I don't want to drag on about it too long because a lot of people have talked about this movie at length and how gorgeous it is. I mean, look at that. Look at the parting of the Red Sea right there. I'm trying to keep this video under an hour and a half, so I don't want to I don't want to rave about this movie so much, but it's near perfect. The story, the characters, the development, the animation, the music, it's all just chef's kiss, and you should watch it. Even if you're not religious, it's really amazing, and everyone needs to see this. I am incredibly mixed on The Road to El Dorado. I watched this movie like third or fourth in the marathon, and I still don't even know if I think it's good. There are just, with a lot of 5 out of 10s like this one, it's just plain average. Like, spoiler, Puss in Boots is just straight mid the whole way through. Puss in Boots 1. But this movie is such a weird mishmash of great and bad elements, and it's just so frustrating because I really think this movie had a lot of potential. A lot of people like it, and that's great, but I don't really. I want to like it a lot more because there are a lot of great things about it, like it's tough to be a god. That's why I'm playing it right now. It's because it's the best part of the movie. It's such a great sequence, and I don't understand why they couldn't let all songs be like this. They never let Tulio and Miguel actually sing, despite them having Disney musical protagonists written all over them. Like, these two dudes are perfect for a musical, and you only let them sing one song, and I don't understand that at all. The rest of the songs are fine, but they really don't grab me, and I think a lot of that is because they don't have big, exciting sequences like this one, or the songs from The Prince of Egypt. And then on top of that, I think Tulio and Miguel are a lot of fun together, but on their own, they spend a lot of time on their own in this movie, and I think Tulio really does not hold up as his own character. He's just a dick. He's just an asshole to Miguel a lot of the time, and I don't understand why he's the one that gets to fuck Chell. I think that was whack. Speaking of Chell, she really doesn't have much of a character. She's just kind of the girl that they both want to fuck, and Tulio gets to fuck her. I think that, again, I don't like that. Miguel's the only out of the three that I really enjoyed, and I really liked how he just grew to like the people and wanted to stay with them. I think if that was just the arc for both of them, this would have been a nice, okay enough movie. But since they just forced conflict between the two, and it really made Tulio unlikable, at least for me in the process, I didn't buy in to any of the third act conflicts because I was just kind of annoyed at where the direction was going, because I kind of knew what was going to happen, and I didn't like it. I think Tulio and Miguel are a lot of fun when they're together for most of the movie, at least in the beginning, so I really wish they just stuck with that and didn't have them didn't force conflict between them. So overall, I couldn't really get into this one. I'm glad a lot of people like it, but it really wasn't for me. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Next up is Chicken Run, and I kind of love this movie, actually. I think this is a hot take, but I think this is the best Aardman movie. And I know a lot of people think it's Wallace and Gromit, but I'll get into that debate later. I really had a great time with this one. I know it's not super deep or compelling or grand or anything like that, but it's just a nice, fun, simple story. These really likable characters trying to escape a prison, and the stakes are felt with this one. I love how they open it up with an unsuccessful attempt, because it really shows the grip that these people have and how hopeless it really feels for the chickens. This movie really takes its time and lets you get attached to the characters so that you feel every glimmer of hope that they feel, and it makes it all the more satisfying when they're actually able to escape the prison in a really fun makeshift airplane sequence that I really liked. Now, it's not all perfect. It is kind of the lie reveal parts are not the best, but honestly, since I was so invested in the story, I didn't care that much. I didn't think it was like super tedious or anything like that. I just thought, yeah, it's kind of played out, and they're obviously going to resolve the conflict, so that didn't need to be in the movie. But honestly, aside from that, I had a lot of fun watching this. I would easily recommend it, and again, I think it's the best Aardman movie. Also, just to clarify, when I say that, I mean best Dreamworks Aardman movie. I haven't seen the ones they've made with Sony or other studios, so I just mean the best Aardman movie that Dreamworks put out. But anyways, let's move on. Alright, Shrek. Everyone loves Shrek, and I do too. I don't know if I really have a lot of unique things to say about this movie, because it's one of the most video essayed movies on the internet, and for good reason. It's a great movie. It's a great subversion of the Disney fairy tale tropes, and I love Shrek's arc. I love how it starts with him not even realizing that he's upset. Like, he doesn't seem sad about being alone at all in the beginning of the movie. He seems perfectly fine with it, and then over the course of the movie, he realizes just how upset he is and how much he wants companionship, and he doesn't think he deserves it, but he learns to trust himself around Donkey and Fiona and open up to them, and it's really nice to see. On top of that, this movie's just really funny. I mean, everyone talks about Shrek and Donkey's, moments, and Lord Farquaad, of course, is really funny, but I love Fiona in this movie. This is honestly the most likable she is in any Shrek movie. She's honest, because she's a nicer version of the princess. She really wants to be a stereotypical princess, but it's just not who she is at all. And it's a similar arc. It's kind of like the reverse arc of Shrek, and I really like that a lot. She's also just super funny, and watching her embrace grossness with Shrek is just really great. It's a really fun movie. It's a strong 8 out of 10. I wouldn't give it a 9. As funny as the Shrek memes were back in the day, I worry that it deluded people into thinking these movies were just kind of a joke, and they actually are really good in their own right. And this one especially, I think is really great, and more people and everyone should rewatch it just to remind themselves of that. Alright, next up we got Spirit, which I enjoyed. I see a lot of negative things about this movie, and honestly, I don't fully get why. It's pretty fun. There are some bad things. I mean, everyone agrees that the Matt Damon narration and the Bryan Adams songs are really weird, but whenever I hear someone talk about how much they don't like the movie, they always say those two things, and then they just kind of leave it there. Well, no, they don't, leave it there, but those are, the two overarching points that they make. And, I mean, yeah, they're not great, but they really don't ruin the movie at all. I think there's a lot to like here. I love the animation. I love the blending of 2D and 3D environments. I don't think I will ever get tired of a movie where an animal bonds. That's an animal that's, fighting against people, bonds with other people. Like, when he's bonding with Little Creek and the girl horse, I thought that was super sweet. And so because of that, a lot of the emotional moments really worked for me, as well as the score. That really helped it advance the emotional plot a lot because it's just really great. Aside from the weird Bryan Adams songs, I still don't really know why there's so many of them in the movie. They're not all bad, but they just don't, tonally, they really don't work. And then I love the climax, the chase scene, the final chase scene with Little Creek riding. It's really fun. And I really don't think this movie gets enough credit. I see some praise. It's kind of a polarizing movie for a lot of people, and I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's great. It's bordering on great. It's a really high 7 out of 10 because there are still enough things wrong with it from holding it back from really being great. But I think more people should watch this one. It deserves more love. And next up we got Sinbad, which is alright. I'm surprised that this one is generally considered the weakest of the DreamWorks 2D animated movies because I think it's better than Road to El Dorado by a fair portion. But it's definitely not amazing. It's a pretty generic, adventure, but not a bad adventure. I kind of like. It's got some fun creature designs and some good obstacles. Like, it's not boring to watch. I was certainly invested, not super invested, but I was invested. I will say this movie definitely doesn't have anything great about it aside from the animation. The creature designs and the environments are both really great, and I love Eris's animation. I think she looks really cool, and she's probably the best part of the movie. She's a pretty boring, she's kind of generic villain. I wouldn't say boring, she's a very generic villain, but she's voice acted really well, she's animated really well, and overall I think she does a pretty good job of being a great threat. If only she had a villain song, I think that would have been really cool, but I liked her a decent bit, and I liked the movie a decent bit. It's really nothing special, it's just kind of slightly above average, but I had a positive experience watching this, and I think that's worth something as we get to the shittier DreamWorks movies ahead, so go Sinbad. Hit it! I like pretty much every scene and moment in Trek 2. It is the best sequel I've ever seen in my entire life. I cannot believe it's this good. Of course, a lot of people have already talked about how amazing it is, so it's hard to add. But for me, I really want to talk about this moment in, obviously, the amazing Holding Out for a Hero sequence. It's impossible to start talking about this movie without playing that clip as I just did. Like, you have to start the segment with that every time. It's a requirement. But something I really appreciate about this sequence is just how happy and confident Shrek is. Like, you've never expect him at the start of the first movie to end up like this. I think this movie doesn't get enough credit for how well it complements the first movie thematically. And the best example of this is how confident Shrek is during this sequence. Because it's so unlike him, at least from the beginning. Like, it's such a crazy idea to go in and crash this. It's easy for Shrek to accept defeat, but there's one thing that he is confident about, and it's his love for Fiona. And so he's willing to do all of this shit for her, and he doesn't even give it a second thought. It's really great to see because he's not filled with the doubt that he's always been filled with throughout this movie, and he learns to trust his friends and the new friends that he's made along the way. It's just such a great expansion of the first movie. And this moment really solidified how incredible this sequence is. It's really great. And then, of course, outside of this sequence, you've got really funny moments, an interesting story, and great characters. I really like Puss in Boots, of course. I don't know if he's good enough to make 2 movies about, but, one of those movies ended up being amazing. We'll get to that later. Really, it's just such an amazing movie. It's easy 9 out of 10. I'm running out of good things to say. I'm realizing how bad I am at praising good movies as opposed to ranting about bad movies. I do a much better job of criticizing, which I don't like. I wish I did a better job of praising, because that makes me feel way smarter. But that's okay. It's fine. It's hard to talk about this movie without bringing up something that people have already said. It's really great, everyone knows it's really great, and everyone should watch it. Shark Tale might actually be the worst movie I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. It is baffling how DreamWorks can make arguably the best sequel of all time and a near masterpiece and then make this in the same year. It's incredible. It's truly incredible. I was really disappointed because I knew this movie was going to be bad, but I really thought I would see the ironic masterpiece that everybody else sees, but I honestly didn't. Like, I laughed a few times, notably at this stupid car wash scene at the end. I mean, that was funny. The awful racial stereotypes were pretty funny. But aside from that, I was just like, I was just bored. I wasn't laughing at how bad the movie was at all. I just thought I was just frustrated at how the main character is the most unlikable character in the movie and causes all the conflict and doesn't really face any repercussions at all because he's the protagonist. And it's crazy how this main love interest girl just kind of falls in love with him anyway, despite him never actually doing anything nice for her. It's just nothing about this movie works at all, and I thought that would be amazing to see, because, you know, it's fun to watch awful movies like that, but this did not hit for me at all. Maybe if I was in a group, or if I was under the influence of substances. I don't know why I said it like that. Yeah, I'm sure if you're in a group or if you're high, maybe this movie's fun, but I was neither of those things. And so I really hated everything about this one. I'm never gonna watch it again. No one should ever watch it. I'm glad people like it. I'm glad that some people can find enjoyment out of this, but I got nothing out of it. 2 out of 10. Get this thing away from me. Madagascar really isn't that great, and I hate to say that because I really wanted to like this movie. I've got some nostalgic value towards it. When I was in 7th grade, I did a theater summer camp, and I played Alex the Lion, and because I was shitting my pants before the first show, the night before, we actually watched the movie, and I remember liking it a lot. But it's really not good. It's not bad. There's a lot of charm to it, and it's definitely consistently funny throughout, which you can't really say about a lot of DreamWorks movies, so I'd give it a lot of credit for that. That definitely kept my attention throughout the whole thing because I was laughing pretty consistently. But man, once they actually get to Madagascar, there's like no story left. They're just kind of fucking around for the rest of the movie. Like the penguins are a lot of fun too. They're great, and they also elevate the movie a decent bit. But man, I think I've said "but man" at least 4 times so far. I don't know. I just was kind of disappointed that this movie spawned such a huge franchise, and it's just kind of nothing. At least for most of it, they kind of just trade story beats. It just feels like a series of episodes about a TV show. This movie works a lot better in a TV show format. I remember really liking the Penguins of Madagascar show. That's a little different, but still, like this doesn't really work as a movie. It's just kind of a bunch of escapades between these 4 people, and these 4 animals are likable and funny enough to make it not bad, but it really doesn't work as a movie. But I would still say it has value. It's not a pointless or dumb movie. I would still give it like a high 5 out of 10. They're bordering on decent, but it's not quite there yet. Yeah. Alright, Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit is a lot of fun. I really liked this movie. I think Chicken Run is slightly stronger, but this is a very close second in terms of Aardman. I see why a lot of people think this is the best Aardman movie. I wouldn't die on this hill that much. I just think Chicken Run is a little bit better. But no, this movie has everything that makes Aardman great. It's very charming, it's very cute, it's very funny. I love this crazy-ass villain. I love the twist of Wallace actually being the were-rabbit. I genuinely did not expect that. And I love the bunny that pretends to be a person. That's like they switch bodies. I think that's the whole point of that scene. I watched this movie a long time ago. I love that the bunny pretending to be a human is great. And then the climax is awesome too, with the 2 dogs in a dog fight. That was so sick. And it's just a really wholesome movie and it's super charming. I really had a lot of fun watching this. I wouldn't say there's really anything bad. It's one of those 7 out of 10, a very high 7 out of 10, I think, bordering on an 8, where I like pretty much everything about it, but there's nothing about it that I really love, and that's kind of where this movie's at. I just think I had a lot of fun watching this, but it wasn't like a crazy, like, unforgettable experience that I am hoping to watch again soon. I just kind of thought, yeah, I really liked this movie, had a lot of fun, and I'm okay with leaving it at that, you know? That's just me trying to justify why I think Chicken Run is a slightly better movie than this one. It's great. Everyone should watch this. I understand why people love it. I don't love it, but I'm close to it, so pretty great movie. Alright, Over the Hedge. I really like this one too. It's pretty similar to Wallace and Gromit, where it's just a really fun, charming, a pretty cozy movie. This is a very cozy movie. I really wish I could imagine like someone watching, like a kid watching this during a snowstorm or something, or like watching it on their laptop if power goes out or something like that. I really wish I knew about this movie when I was a young kid, because it's that kind of movie, the kind of movie that I would fall in love with, because it's simple enough to where nothing about the movie is really going to go over my head, but it does what it wants to do well enough to where I would still fall in love with this movie as a kid and then grow to appreciate it as an adult. Now that I watched it for the first time when I was 18, I could still like the movie a lot for what it does, but I really wish I knew if I had seen this as a kid, this would be one of my all-time favorites. I can just tell. But it still holds up. I really like it. The characters are all pretty likable and funny. I love the Bruce Willis raccoon. I love the Wanda Sykes squirrel. The villains, the crazy neighbor and the Verminator, are both a ton of fun. I love the climax. The climax goes so hard. There's two climaxes too. You got the home invasion and all the crazy shit going on in there, and then the truck sequence when they still think the raccoon is a liar and they throw him out of the truck. I burst out laughing. That was hilarious. I will say the liar reveal plot isn't great. I don't care about it too much. I think people only really care about cliches if they're already not that invested in the movie. I think if you're invested in the story and the characters, I don't think cliches are that big of a deal, because they're not unrealistic conflicts. They're just kind of played out. And so I understand it's still not good. I still would rather it's not in the movie. But since I already was on board what the movie was trying to do, it didn't really hinder my enjoyment of it that much. Kind of the same thing as Chicken Run. Yeah, I think this movie is a ton of fun. It's nothing amazing, but I'm really glad I watched it. Alright, flushed away. We're on a solid 3 streak of decent 7 out of 10 movies. This is probably the weakest of the 3, though. I still liked it a lot, but it definitely didn't have as many fun sequences as like Wallace and Gromit and Over the Hedge, I think. I love all the action in this movie. All the chase sequences and the climax are both really fun. I just think I wasn't as invested as these two main characters as I was the characters of the previous 2 movies. They're nice. Their arc is nice. It's cute, but it's really nothing special. It's similar conflict. It feels kind of like a rom-com, honestly. These 2 people from completely different walks of life come together and bond over this journey. It's just, like they're charming and likable and funny enough, but it really didn't speak to me. Well, not speak to me. I didn't really think it was that special, but it was good enough to keep the movie afloat, because all of the other stuff about it was a ton of fun. I just love the story of this movie. The conflict of a rat getting flushed down a toilet and having to bond with these other like sewer rats, and then stopping the sewer from getting all fucked up. I think that was a ton of fun. And the conflict revolving around the World Cup with the terrible animation on the humans, I don't know. This movie has a lot of charm still. It's very similar to the other Artman movies. I do think the 3D is a little weird. Like, it looks good. I definitely still would have preferred if this movie was stop motion, but maybe that was too hard with all the complicated set pieces. I understand that. But I do think the animation on Chicken Run and Wallace and Gromit is better, but it still looks good enough here. Yeah, this movie is fun. I like it a lot. I just don't think it's amazing. I don't know if I ever feel like watching it again, but it's decent. I'd recommend it to somebody. I don't know who, but somebody. Shrek the Third is awful. Not a very surprising statement, but man, this movie just is such a misfire. It's crazy, because I think it had some of the charm of the first 2 Shreks, just based on the animation style. And bringing back Prince Charming as the main villain was a good idea in theory, but it didn't really work out very well. And there's a couple funny jokes throughout, and it's pretty interesting how Amy Poehler and Princess Carolyn and Maya Rudolph are in this movie. I think that's pretty cool. Or Amy Sedaris. I know her. It's just funnier to call her Princess Carolyn. She shows up a surprising amount in DreamWorks movies, and I think that's pretty cool. But aside from that, this movie fucking sucks. There's that one good scene with Shrek and Arthur by the campfire, and then an occasionally funny joke. That's literally everything good about this movie. The conflict is boring. It's so annoying because Shrek being worried about being a dad isn't a bad idea. It's actually a pretty damn good idea for a new conflict, because they've already kind of done the whole Shrek proving himself as a worthy love for Fiona and believing in himself. You know, they did that great in the first two movies. They need to move on from that, and they found a good idea and then made it a joke. And then the whole movie is just a joke. Prince Charming's a joke. There's no stakes. Arthur is trying to not be a joke, but he's also the most boring character in any movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Or maybe not, but he's up there. It's crazy how they could have made this movie at least decent. I don't think this movie could have been good in any state it could have had. But it had a chance to be not awful, but they fucked it all up. And this is just such a, like, there's just so much wrong with this. More so than other just basic bad DreamWorks movies, this one really tainted the franchise, especially given how the fourth movie isn't even that bad. Yeah, 3 out of 10, but I also hate this one, like, more than Shark Tale, probably. But it's technically a little better than Shark Tale. It sucks. Don't watch this shit. I'm so happy the B movie exists. Out of the unholy the unholy trinity of ironically good DreamWorks movies, you got Shark Tale, B movie, and Boss Baby. This is the only one that hits for me. I hate Shark Tale. I don't really like Boss Baby, but this movie is fucking hilarious, and I really like it. It's really not good by all objective metrics of a movie. The story is incredibly disorganized. Disorganized is the right way to say that, isn't it? The story is incredibly disorganized. The animation isn't really that great. There's no consistent themes or messages throughout the movie. But it's just so funny. It's just so funny, and it knows that it's a stupid-ass idea, and it runs with it, and that's huge. I'll always respect a movie that knows what it is, and doesn't try to be anything that it's not, and that's what this movie does, for the most part. It does try to get a little serious by the end, but it's really not that big of a deal. It's definitely the worst part of the movie, but that's okay. For the most part, I enjoyed it. I think it was pretty funny. I think it's just so goofy, and it's really not a good movie. But I had a lot of enjoyment out of it, like more so than actual good movies, and that's what this is all about. So I'm really glad that this movie exists. I think I'm really glad this one got memed more so than the Boss Baby. Well, I don't know if it got memed more so, but I'm glad this one deserves it. This one deserves the meme, and I'm really glad that it happened, even though obviously it's not really as big of a meme now. But yeah, this movie is fun. I like it a lot. Kung Fu Panda is great. I like it a lot, and that's kind of all I feel about this one. I out of the big three of like the good DreamWorks franchises, that being this, Shrek, and How to Train Your Dragon, this is probably the one that I connected with the least, and it's a shame because these movies are really great, but I don't know, it just hit a little less hard than I thought it was going to. At least this first movie did. But I still really love it. I think the fight scenes are amazing. I know that's not a very interesting thing to say. A lot of people have already said that. But that doesn't change it. They're arguably the best thing about the movie. They are so well done. The best out of any Kung Fu Panda movie, especially the bridge fight. That's my favorite fight. I think Poe's final fight with Tai Lung is a little underwhelming for me, even though like the whole point of the movie is that Poe is able to become this great warrior without having to compromise. Like he can use what makes him special to succeed, and that's an amazing message, and I love that. But it makes this final fight a little bit less epic than I would have liked, but I understand that they needed to do that for the message of the movie, so it's a necessary thing. But I'm just saying that's how I felt about it, but that's dumb. But so it didn't feel as when the other fight scenes earlier in the movie were more epic than this. It's just I didn't love that, but the message of the movie is really great and it's developed super well. I really like Poe as a protagonist. I think he's funny and charming, and I love his growth. As I've said, I think his arc is really well done, and I like Tai Lung as a villain a lot. I do think Shen is a bit better, and I'm gonna get more into that later. I think because Tai Lung was more of Shifu's nemesis and not Poe's, made me a little less invested in him, because I like Shifu as a character, but he doesn't really have any great moments for me in these movies. He's nice to have, but he's not really the main reason why these movies are good or anything like that. So yeah, I think this movie's really great. There's just a couple little things for me that are holding it back from being amazing, but I totally understand why other people would say that. Madagascar 2 is a slightly better version of Madagascar 1, even though it's arguably even more disorganized than Madagascar 1. But it definitely pulls off what it's trying to do a bit better. It's just as funny, if not more so, and actually attempting to have emotional moments with the characters is really good. This is easily the best movie for Gloria and Melman. I think they're the most likable and interesting they have ever been in these movies, even though all they're doing is just kind of a basic rom-com subplot of this unlikely pairing, Gloria thinks she wants this other guy. I didn't think the Moto stuff was that funny. I thought it was funny, but I didn't really care too much. But I think them coming together was very endearing, and I really liked the volcano scene at the end, and the plane scene in the beginning, of course, was hilarious. There's a lot of just great scenes. The climax is fun too. It's a pretty fun movie for the most part. This still has the Madagascar problem of trying to do too much. Like each one of the four has their own plot, kind of. I mean, Alex and Marty's thing kind of intertwines, but it's not really that big of a deal. And I think Alex's plot with his dad is extremely boring. And the penguins are less fun in this movie. They're still good, but they're really not as great as they were in the first movie. But since they're trying to balance so much in this movie with how many different characters are doing different things, it's just, not most of the plot lines just become kind of half-baked. And none of them really turn out all that interesting besides the Gloria and Melman stuff and the handful of great scenes in the end. They're great in a vacuum, but the actual, the scenes in between that get you to those great scenes really aren't that interesting at all, and that really holds this movie back from actually being good. It's close, it's very close to good, but it's not quite there yet, and it really sucks to see because I really like the idea of these movies. I think they could be a lot better with just how funny they are, but I still like it, and I think it's the best main series Madagascar, for sure. But it's not, it's only a little bit better than 1, but still better. Probably like a 6 out of 10. Monsters vs. Aliens is pretty bad. It's definitely not good at all. It's just bad. It's very comfortably in the 4 out of 10 range, where it's not terrible, but it's bad. It could have. There's some potential here, though, and it's really a shame. The clip that I'm putting up right now is the best part of the movie. This scene, all the president stuff, is great. I love this scene of him walking up and playing Axel F to the alien, and then when they're all sitting in the wars room, very Doctor Strangelove-esque. Like those are the best moments of the movie, because they're the only times where it really feels like a parody. This movie is supposed to be a parody of monster movies. And all the president stuff that's the only successful parody in the movie. The rest of the movie is just a monster movie. It's just these 4 kind of not very interesting people trying to stop the monster. And that's not very fun, because the movie clearly wants to. You can't spoof a genre and then play it straight in the same movie. That doesn't work. And if they had just gone with the parody angle like they did with the president scenes, this movie could have been decent. Definitely wouldn't have been great, but it would have been kind of good. But no, they pussied out. they just pussied out. It's nice to see Will Arnett in the movie. It's weird to see him voice other stuff that isn't BoJack or being in Arrested Development. But that, having an actor that I really like does not make a movie good. This movie is still bad. It's bad. I would really, I know it has its fans, and I don't really get why. I think maybe people watch this scene and maybe think it's indicative of the whole movie, when it's really not. The boyfriend plot is also bad. I didn't even mention that. That's not very interesting at all. Really, outside of the president stuff, there's really no reason to watch this. Nice 4 out of 10. There is another massive spider in my fucking basement. Every time I'm trying to record, these beasts always pop up. I'm gonna take another picture of this one, put it up there. I'm working on another video that will have another spider interlude, so this is gonna become a reoccurring theme, which is lovely. But anyway, How to Train Your Dragon is fucking amazing. I love this movie so much. It's so good. And I don't want to be mean to Dreamworks, but this movie has the Pixar magic. And I hate to say that because, I mean, there are some shitty ass Pixar movies as of late. I honestly hate Lightyear more than any of these movies that I've talked about in this video, even if Shark Tale and Shrek the Third are worse. But this movie really feels like a Pixar movie. Oh, and I love that. I really love that. I love, an underdog bonding with a creature, and they learn about each other, and he grows super confident through that. I love how Hiccup doesn't start out as an idiot. He just starts as an unconfident. He just starts out unconfident. He's not an idiot. He's able to shoot down the Night Fury himself, and he's not super clumsy. He's just kind of devalued and too scared to really stand up for himself. And as he becomes more confident with Toothless, he's able to stand up for himself more with other people, and it's really great. And I love this scene. This scene right here that I'm playing is my favorite scene in any Dreamworks movie. It's just so beautiful. And the score is amazing. The father-son arc is pretty great too. There's almost nothing wrong with this movie. The only thing that I really don't like about it are the annoying side characters. They're not funny, and they somehow get less funny every movie. They are more heavily featured and worse every time, and that's really annoying. But other than that, this is a near perfect movie. Alright, Shrek Forever After is pretty good. I enjoyed this one. I think it's slightly worse than Shrek 1, like a smidge worse. Just because the parody angle of Shrek 1 is way stronger, and on top of having a great emotional arc, it also successfully spoofs Disney, and I really like that. This movie has really great emotional stuff, but it's not all that funny or clever in its story, which is a shame, because that's kind of what the Shrek franchise is all about. But yeah, it's not that big of a deal. But I really didn't laugh at this movie at all, which I can't. I definitely, there were plenty of funny moments in Shrek 1 and 2, but not really so much this one, and it definitely takes a bit longer to get going. It took a lot longer for me to get hooked on this one than it did for the first 2 Shreks. I also think Fat Puss is weird, and Donkey isn't really that important in this movie. Like, he's fine, but this is definitely one of his weaker showings. The thing that really holds this movie together is obviously the Shrek and Fiona arc. It's done really well, so well. I don't know why I doubled down there. No, it's really great. It's perfectly paced, and it's perfectly written, and I love how they have their first attempt at a kiss, but it doesn't work because even though they're true loves in another universe, they're not true loves in this one, and though Shrek has to actually fall in love with her, and he admits that it was so amazing to fall in love with her all over again. That line was so good, and I really liked that. It's a really great, it feels like a love letter to Shrek. It does kind of feel like a fan fiction. I've heard people talk about that, but it's just like such a good one that I don't really care about it. And Rumpelstiltskin is a pretty fun villain. He's not as good as Farquaad, and definitely not as good as Fairy Godmother, but he's good. He's decent. That's kind of emblematic of the movie, Definitely not as good as Shrek 2, and a little worse than Shrek 1, but still very enjoyable. I like this one. Man, 2010 was a really good year for Dreamworks. You had How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek Forever After, and Megamind all in one year. It's crazy how no one cared about this movie when it came out because of Despicable Me. Well, not nobody, but this didn't really take off in popularity until a lot later because of the Minions. And I mean, Despicable Me is a decent movie, but come on, this movie slaps. This movie's so good, and everyone knows now that it's really good, and I'm glad. But it took a while. I shouldn't say this as if like I was right the whole time. I saw this movie when it came out in theaters, and I was like 6, and didn't really care. So I don't really have a lot of room to complain about this, but I know it's really good now because I watched it now or in December. It's great. Everyone has already kind of talked about why it's great. It's such a great parody of the superhero genre and really playing with what it really means to be good and evil, because the line between those two isn't really as clear as a lot of other superhero movies would make it out to be. All the vocal performances are really good. The Welcome to the Jungle is the second best use of a song behind Holding Out for a Hero, even though they made their own version of it for Shrek 2, but still, it's similar level of awesome. All the action scenes are a ton of fun. There's really nothing bad about this movie besides maybe the third act breakup between Megamind and Minion. That was kind of forced and lame, but all the other emotional plot lines are paced really well. It's just a really fun time. Great movie. Alright, Kung Fu Panda 2 is fire. Okay, I don't know why I did that. This movie's so good, and I do think it's better than Kung Fu Panda 1, which I think might be an unpopular opinion, but yeah, this one really does it for me, especially with Shen. I'm glad that this villain is more of a nemesis for Po. I think that is best because Po is the main character and the most compelling character, so having him be, the main focus of the villain's plot too is really great, and his plot's awesome. I love Poe's backstory. It not only further develops Po and endears him to the audience, but then it also builds up Shen as a villain and shows how big of a threat he is. It's so great. I love those scenes, man, especially with how they're animated. That's really great. The fight scenes aren't quite as good. They aren't quite as impressive as the first movies, but really it's a small price to pay for just a much more compelling experience emotionally. I love Po finding inner peace. It's paced really well, and it's done. It's such a great scene. And the Furious Five, I think, are the most compelling they are in this movie. A lot of people made a big fuss when they weren't in Kung Fu Panda 4, and like that movie has a lot of issues, but they really aren't anything special, in my opinion. Like, they're nice to have, they're fun to have, but do you really care if the David Cross bird is not in Kung Fu Panda 4? I think that's lame. But in this movie, Tigress is there to actually support Po emotionally and be helpful and an interesting character, because, she definitely wanted to be the Dragon Warrior. I think out of the Furious Five, she is the only one with potential as a character, and some of that is expanded upon in this movie, and, they could have done more, but it's good enough. Yeah, no, I think that's a big thing that I am confused about with discourse around these movies is, like, the Furious Five don't do much. They're nice to have. They definitely make the movies better, but they're not really key aspects in my opinion. But anyway, this movie's amazing. Really the perfect Kung Fu Panda movie. Bordering on a 9 out of 10. It might actually be a 9 out of 10 depending on how I'm feeling. Maybe not, because the fight scenes aren't that. The fight scenes are good, but they just kind of feel like any other animated movie, as opposed to the first movies, which just have such amazing fight scenes. I'm getting off topic here. This movie's really great, the best Kung Fu Panda, and I'm really glad it exists. They probably should have stopped making Kung Fu Panda movies after this one, but we'll get to it. As I mentioned before, Puss in Boots is the it's the middest movie ever. Maybe not ever, but it is one of just the most painfully average, one of the most painfully average movies I have ever seen in my entire 19 years on God's great planet. See, that's how I do it right there. I'm kind of getting off the rails here because I don't really want to talk that much about this movie, other than saying it's so mid, because it's the best way to describe it. Everything about this movie is fine. The story is fine. This cat dance scene is probably the best part of the movie. Like, it's kind of fun. The action is fine. The characters are fine. The Puss in Puss in Humpty Dumpty arc is decent enough. The villains aren't that great. The Princess Carolyn villain, though, I like that Princess Carolyn's in the movie. That's pretty cool. But man, nothing about this movie is really good, and nothing about it is really bad either. It's crazy. So excuse me for kind of, I don't really know what I'm doing anymore. It's fine. Don't watch it unless you really like average movies. Sorry for how weird I'm being in this segment. I just feel like it's the best way to make something entertaining out of this movie because it's just so average. Alright, full disclosure, I was high when I watched Madagascar 3, but I really don't think that affected my enjoyment of the movie that much. It made it a little bit better, a little bit funnier, but really didn't save it like I thought it might. I really don't think this movie's that good. It's not worthless, it's got some good things, but really not a fan of it. I enjoyed the opening car chase scene, thought that was fun. The villain was surprisingly good. I remember, actually, I think I saw this movie in theaters, and the villain pissed me off, even though I was like 8 at the time. You'd think that's when I would really enjoy this movie, but honestly, that aspect got better with time. I like the climax, it's decently fun, and the fireworks scene is actually pretty good. I forgot how much of a banger Firework is. I don't really like pop music at all, but that song is kind of good. But that's it. That's pretty much everything of note in this movie. The story is really boring. Pretty much all the new characters, aside from the Bryan Cranston tiger, they're pretty worthless. The big four, they don't really do. Besides Alex is the only one that really has things to do in this movie. Just fact checking, I was 7 years old when I watched this movie in theaters, and I was still annoyed by everyone doing the stupid Marty Afro thing. It was in all the trailers. I got tired of it, even when I was 7. So, being 19, I really didn't enjoy it. It's only one part, but that's like Marty's thing, basically, is how much he loves the circus. He doesn't really do much either. Gloria and Melman are barely important. It's a real shame, because Madagascar 2 actually tried to give all 4 of them something important, but this movie kind of shits all over that and gives a ton of screen time to the new characters who are lame and boring. And so because of that, the movie's pretty lame and boring. The penguins aren't really that notable either. I don't remember anything they did in this one. Really not great. If you're a huge fan of Madagascar, you'd probably find some merit in it. It's not completely worthless, but really didn't love this one. Nice 4 out of 10. Alright, now we're getting to the Dreamworks movies that I actually remember seeing trailers for. And I remember I was very intrigued by Rise of the Guardians, and I never saw it for some reason. But it's really good. It's a very good movie. I'm really sad that 8-year-old me was correct. He knew that this movie was gonna be good, but I don't know. I guess maybe I never actually told my mom. That happened sometimes where I'd be excited about a movie, and then never would actually be like, "Hey, Mom, I want to go see this movie." I would just kind of think about it and didn't do anything about it. But anyway, Rise of the Guardians is very good. It's not amazing. It's just a nice, cute little story. Dreamworks movies can sometimes lean into being too crude or goofy or stupid, and so whenever they try to take on a more serious, interesting vibe with a movie, it's really weird how they can usually nail it, and it's annoying that they don't do this all the time, but whatever. They really nail the wonder of this world with all these holiday mascots. Just the vibes on this movie are pretty great throughout. And Jack Frost as a pro, he's one of the best DreamWorks protagonists. His arc is super compelling, realizing that he wants to, help the kids, and he wants to be seen by the kids, and just figuring out, because he's not quite, a holiday icon like these other guys, so he doesn't really feel like he fits in, or doesn't really know what he wants to be, and him discovering that and finally learning to be, and finally being seen by the kids by the end of the movie is really interesting, and it's the best part of the movie, because he kind of holds this thing together. The other holiday mascots are fine. I didn't really care about him too much. His beef with the Easter Bunny is kind of funny, but I don't really care too much. Santa's whatever. And the villain is decent. It's a bit generic, but, he's voice acted really well. So that's good, and the climax is pretty enjoyable. The kids are whatever, I don't really care too much about them, but the vibes of this movie are great, and the main character is really great, and that's kind of all you need to make a good experience. So yeah, a nice 7 out of 10. Not amazing, but pretty good. I just can't bring myself to hate the Croods. It's nice. It's I don't want to say a guilty pleasure. There's definitely some nostalgia coming into play here, but because there's no real good justification for me giving this a 6 out of 10 instead of a 5 or a 4. But I don't know. I like this movie. I had a positive experience watching it, and I think it deserves. I'm glad that that's not too hot of a take. I'm glad some people enjoy this one. Because, yeah, it's really not, there's nothing that great about it. The emotional beats are really predictable and kind of basic, but I liked the way that I think I was invested in the Croods as a family, aside from the stupid middle kid, I forgot his name, he's stupid and I hate him. But I think Eep is a good protagonist. I like Grug, I like his arc. I like Guy, I think he's funny. The joke of Grug wanting his mom to be dead was pretty funny in my opinion. I don't know. I was consistently giggling at this one even when I watched it recently because I saw this in theaters, and so and I really liked it then. So I think I was expecting to be proven wrong and assume that this movie was bad. But honestly, I still think there's a lot to like here. I just think the characters and their interactions are a lot of fun, and because that's kind of the movie rides on that, because the whole movie is them fucking around. So you need to have an interesting dynamic, and it's interesting enough to where even though the emotional beats are basic as hell, I liked watching them play out, and I liked watching the arcs play out, even though I knew exactly where they were going. And I like the creature designs; they're really good. The environments are fun to look at, so I think this movie holds more weight than just being, a basic kids movie. I do think it is not bad, even by my 19-year-old me standards. But I totally get why some people wouldn't like it. I think part of this is nostalgia, but I don't know. I'm gonna die on this hill. I like the kids. Turbo was more of an ironic masterpiece than Boss Baby and Shark Tale combined. I know that's a bit of a hot take, but I had fun with this stupid-ass movie. Easily the stupidest idea in a movie I think I've ever seen. This is one of the dumbest things ever, and I enjoyed it. It's not good at all. But again, this was the ironic masterpiece that I thought I was gonna get out of Shark Tale. I got out of this one, kind of. I wasn't like laughing my ass off or anything, but there were plenty of moments where I was just laughing at I was just kind of giggling at how stupid this concept was, and how they tried to play it straight, and also there were definitely moments where the movie acknowledged this is so dumb, and I appreciated that. The story is super basic and bland and dumb. None of the characters are likable or interesting at all. None of the dynamics are interesting at all. Turbo's stupid feud with his brother is so awful. Nothing about this movie is good. Legit nothing at all. And I'm okay with that. For some reason, in this movie, it works. I have no real reason to say I like this movie more than Shark Tale, but I just do, man. I just do. Like when at the final race scene, when he tucked and rolled to beat the guy, I burst out laughing. It was amazing. Despite all that, I think I'm definitely in the minority in this, so I would not recommend you watch this movie. I'm sure you'd probably have more fun with Shark Tale or Boss Baby for an ironic masterpiece, but for some reason, this is it for me, baby. Still a 3 out of 10, though. Mr. Peabody and Sherman is the perfect kids movie, and what I mean by that is that out of all the kids movies that are just trying to be a fun, cute little adventure without any crazy adult themes or messages, you ain't beating this one. You ain't beating this movie. Now that's not to say it's a perfect movie. Again, it doesn't have any interesting themes or messages. It's got good emotional beats, but in terms of anything like that adults can really latch on to, not much is going on here. But still, if I could pick any DreamWorks movie to show to a 7-year-old, I'm doing this one. Because I think they wouldn't be able to fully appreciate the greatness of a movie like How to Train Your Dragon until they're like 9 or 10. Because I remember I saw How to Train Your Dragon 2 in theaters, and I didn't like it because there weren't enough poop jokes. And it was too good for me. But that maybe I was a stupid ass kid, but maybe other kids are smarter now. But still, I think if I had to pick a movie to show a 7-year-old, I'm picking this one. I love all the cute little history references. I like history jokes because I know some history. I've always been one of the more interesting subjects to me. So I appreciated that part of the movie. I love Mr. Peabody and Sherman's dynamic, even though Sherman's a little too useless. I'm glad that he actually, I'm glad that that becomes his arc, because I worry that's another thing. In a buddy adventure, there's usually one that's dumber, that's supposed to be the dumb, funny one, and sometimes DreamWorks movies take that too far where they don't do shit, and that can be infuriating. With Sherman, yes, he can be annoying, but he learns to be not annoying. And by the end of the movie, he actually is a crucial part in solving the main conflict, and that's awesome, and I love that. And I love the emotional moments between the two when they say "I love you" to each other, and he calls him Dad when he thinks that Sherman calls him Dad when he thinks he's dead. That's awesome. The time travel stuff is a little confusing because time travel is impossible to understand. I think they kind of play with it a little bit in a way that's funny. I don't remember too well because this was the very first movie I watched for this marathon, so it was a long time ago. I just remember, I remember all the general stuff that I liked about it. Patrick Warburton being in the movie is always a plus. He's really funny. Yeah, there's not a lot wrong with this movie. It just doesn't do anything crazy to make it a great, amazing experience that everyone should see. It's just a nice fun time that doesn't try to do anything else, and it really succeeds in that. So yeah, good 7 out of 10. How to Train Your Dragon 2 is fucking awesome. I have no idea why 8-year-old me didn't like the movie. As I just said, there weren't a lot of poop jokes, so I guess that disappointed me a bit. I remember vividly thinking, like, this movie wasn't very funny, and that was what I thought after I saw it. I did not give a shit about any of the amazing content in this one, which is pretty hilarious. But I do think also you do need to see the first one to kind of fully appreciate it, so that was definitely, I hadn't seen that, so that definitely contributed to it. But now I am fully able to appreciate that this movie is awesome and amazing and beautiful. I don't think it's as good as the first one. I do think it's a bit weaker. I think the story is a bit clunkier, and the characters are just a little bit less interesting. At least Hiccup and Toothless are slightly less compelling in this movie. And I also think the confrontation with Drago Bloodfist at the end isn't quite as good as the big fight with the Red Death at the end of the first movie. It's good. It's still great, but it's just a little bit weaker. I wouldn't say there's much that this movie does better besides Stoic's death. I think that's handled amazingly, and I was really surprised by it, honestly. I mean, I had forgotten completely about that, and it's crazy that a DreamWorks movie actually had the balls to kill off a main character, because that's something that is sorely lacking in animated movies today. And I just loved everything that he had to do in this movie. He was way more interesting in this one. I loved seeing him, reaffirm his growth from the first movie, because sometimes sequels don't do that very well. And then his scenes with Hiccup's mother are really, Volka is her name. They're really great, and honestly, I got pretty sad when he died. And it really served to build up Drago as a threat, which I really like, because aside from that, he doesn't have that many great traits as a villain. His motivations are lame, and his scream is really embarrassing, but his, I was still intimidated by him because of Stoic's death and everything that led up to that, so I was still pretty invested in the climax. There's so many amazing emotional scenes peppered throughout this movie, and it really just, it makes the entire resolution just hit really that much harder. So, really great movie. Bordering on a 9, I'm not too sure, but yeah. The Penguins of Madagascar is pretty good. There's not too much to say about this one, because it's just kind of it's kind of like Mr. Peabody and Sherman, where it's a very straightforward, kind of adventure-y movie. I don't know if I want to call it an action movie, even though the action in this movie is awesome. The best parts of the movie are the crazy-ass chase scenes that the penguins get into. Like, those are a ton of fun. And it's similar to Mr. Peabody and Sherman, where it doesn't really try to do anything crazy or deep or emotional, but it definitely is not as good with the emotional beats that it tries. Like, I think Private's arc of becoming a respected and valued member of the team is, fun. It's nice, it's decent, but it's not part of the time it's a joke, I feel like. Like when Skipper, like whenever another Penguin does something and Skipper says, "Wow, you are a respected and valued member of this team," that's really funny. But then it turns Private's concern about that into kind of a joke, and it kind of flip flops. It picks and chooses when the movie wants to take that seriously, and that's lame. But aside from that, I enjoyed this movie. I love the random celebrity name drops. Because, like, this is a kid's movie, but what kid is gonna know who Charlize Theron is? But are people like that? I mean, they'll know who Nick Cage is, maybe. But, like, I didn't know half the people he name dropped. I just thought that was funny. The villain is enjoyable, nothing amazing, but he's fine. That's kind of the whole movie. It's just a good time. It's nothing amazing or spectacular. It's better, in my opinion, than the Madagascar movies, just because it doesn't meander like those do. It still has an actual plot and story, and it executes that decently well. There's just nothing amazing to latch on to. Probably don't really feel like watching this one again, but I'm glad it exists. Home sucks. I really don't see how people could enjoy this one outside of nostalgia. I'm pretty sure this movie has its fans, and I don't get it, man. I really did not like this one. This movie just feels so generic, despite all of the wacky scenarios that happen in it, but it's just the most predictable story with these another unlikely pairing going on an adventure to save the day. The outcast of the group meets a person, meets another person who has an issue of some sort, and then they bring the best out of each other, and it's just does not hit when I'm not really invested in either of the characters. Except, the Rihanna girl is fine. I didn't hate her. But she's not compelling enough to carry this story. I didn't really love the Sheldon Cooper alien. I can't take his voice seriously. I'm sorry. And the way he speaks is pretty annoying. It was not charming at all. There was really just nothing enjoyable. I think actually I remember liking the climax, or one of this movie has a lot of climaxes. Because in the end, the aliens, like the enemy aliens, are just kind of like, they're like, oh, surprise, we're good. We don't hate you at all. We just needed like this one artifact. My memory on this movie is a bit hazy, but I just remember not being satisfied by that resolution at all. I think just stopping there was like a big climactic sequence that was actually pretty good and enjoyable, and they didn't stick with that. I don't know why they didn't. The Rihanna songs are fine. I don't really have a problem with Rihanna's music. There's just really not much here. It's kind of nice to see the Rihanna girl and the Sheldon Cooper alien become friends, but I've just seen this kind of thing a lot, and so it really didn't do much to stand out from every other animated movie. Really would not recommend this one. Don't watch it. Kung Fu Panda 3 is alright. It's a nice little movie. It's oh my god, I can't speak today. This movie's hard to talk about because while it has plenty of merit, I don't think there's a single thing that it does better than the first two. The action is okay. Kai is a good villain. I like his villain song is dope, and J.K. Simmons does a great job of voice acting. But that's kind of all he's got. I like it. I mean, his Pokemon style of villainy is cool. This movie's just kind of cool. The final confrontation with Kai with the different animation is really cool too. And that's great and all, but the Furious Five are somehow even less compelling than they were in the first movie, which they were already not very interesting at all. So, and they're barely a part of this one. And then the Bryan Cranston dad is cool, but the lie revealed story with him is really dumb and predictable. But you know, he's a fun character to have, I guess, and I like having him around. And then the stuff in the village is just kind of boring. It really feels very meandering, and like the plot isn't going anywhere for a bit. It feels like we have to pause the story to let Poe fuck around in this village for a while before we can keep moving with the narrative, you know. And I really don't like it when animated movies do that, because they tend to do that. So there's a lot about this movie that kind of irks me, despite it being a good Kung Fu Panda story. Like, it does everything that you'd want it to do. And, you know, I would give it credit for that, because the fourth one doesn't do that. We'll get to that later. So I'd still say there's enough. I think this movie is good enough to watch with the first two. It's definitely a notable step down, but I still think it's good enough. You know, a 6 out of 10 probably. Trolls sucks. I don't like it. There's really not much more to it. It's just a plain old bad movie. It's the perfect textbook example of a bad kids movie, because yeah, it probably meets its. I mean, a lot of kids like it. Clearly, that's why it was so successful, and has 2 sequels. But it's just like, I just don't like kids movies that don't try at all, because you're just so obvious about the fact that you don't really care about the quality of the movie. You just want to market it towards kids, because kids will like most things. So I hate the argument that you can't criticize animated movies like this because they're targeted towards kids. Kids have the lowest standard for movies, so meeting that bar is not an accomplishment. I'm not gonna celebrate a movie for doing what it wants to do, and what it wants to do is nothing. No. If I want to show a kid a movie, I'd want to show him something like Mr. Peabody and Sherman. It's actually good, instead of this shit that just sings a bunch of pop songs and throws a bunch of colors at you. It's just so bland. But it's not like horrendously awful, which is arguably worse. This movie isn't funny bad at all. Some of the performances are good enough. I kind of like the Zooey Deschanel Goblin. She's probably the best part of the movie. And I will say, I don't like pop music in general. If you like it, that's fine, and you'd probably like this movie a lot more than I do. The constant breaks into song did not increase my enjoyment of the movie, when it was more often than not a song that I didn't care about. And that's not good for a musical movie, you know? And on top of that, a musical movie with a super boring, generic story, and it's just, this movie doesn't try at all. It doesn't do anything interesting at all. The only thing ironically funny about this is the singing killed my grandma line, and that scene actually as a whole is pretty good. I think Branch is probably still the best character in the movie. He's almost interesting, but he's not. He's so close. He's so close to being an okay character, but he ain't. So, yeah, really nothing great about this one. Probably a 4 out of 10. Because, yeah, it does accomplish what it wants to do, which is nice. Because, I mean, some movies can't even do that. Like Shark Tale can't even do that. But it's just plays it so safe. This movie kind of pisses me off. If you can't tell, I really am frustrated by this movie. A lot, partially because my girlfriend really likes it. And I just don't get it, man. I don't think I ever will. We'll get to the sequels later. I have varying thoughts about those. But this first movie is bad. And I don't like it. 4 out of 10. The Boss Baby fucking sucks. I understand why this movie became a meme because of how stupid the idea for it is, but man, it's not funny at all. I mean, actually, there were a couple of jokes I liked. When they make fun of his middle name being Leslie in the airport, I thought that was funny. But this movie is very generic, and I think a lot of people forget that. Despite how crazy the idea is, it only actually has fun with that dumb idea for the first 20 minutes, which are the best part of the movie. I definitely enjoyed those a bit more because it's the only part of the movie where it really understands how stupid it is and just runs with it. From that point on, it just becomes a standard, two unlikely people bonding and stopping a villain. The same shit again. Yeah, and it's just not great. I don't hate it. It's better than like Home because it's stupid enough, but it still has occasional funny moments, mostly due to how stupid of an idea it is. But I mean, all the attempts at serious moments, those aren't fucking gonna work. Yeah, this movie's bad. I really didn't enjoy it. I was kind of disappointed. I thought it'd be funnier than it was. I would not recommend it. 4 out of 10 once again. I didn't really like the Captain Underpants movie, but that's not the movie's fault, really. I was not into the Captain Underpants books as a child, so I really didn't fully grasp what was going on here. I didn't want to read them just for the sake of understanding this movie better. Um, and I've heard from other people that have read the books and have watched this movie that they like it, and it is, from what I can tell, it's a very good adaptation, which is great if you have read the books, but I haven't, and so because of that, I kind of had a hard time understanding what's going on, and that's good. This is a me problem, not the movie's problem. It's definitely, it does its job really well, and I applaud that, but yeah, I didn't really enjoy it that much, but that's just because I hadn't read the books, and I'm sure if anybody has read them, I would recommend this, because even besides that, I still liked the two leads. I thought they were fun, and I didn't hate the jokes. They were fine, and I understand that the potty humor works better in this movie, but I still didn't love it. I didn't find this movie all that funny, and but I definitely think if anyone has read the Captain Underpants books, they would definitely like this movie a lot, and that's really all an adaptation is supposed to do. So I'll give it credit for that, but not for me. 5 out of 10. How to Train Your Dragon 3 is the weakest of the three, but just barely. I still really, really enjoyed this one a lot. It's a perfect conclusion in my opinion. I do think I think this one has generally been accepted as a good ending, but I think some people consider this one a massive step down from 1 and 2, and I disagree with that. The only thing is, it has the same issue as 2. Of the big issue between these two movies, How to Train Your Dragon 2 and 3, is that they kind of meander a lot in the beginning. They're very clunky in how they actually set up the main plots, and they just have so much exposition that eventually gets resolved in a really great way, but sometimes it can take a while, and that's not really a problem with 1, which is why I still think the first one is the best one. But this happens, this is a pretty big problem in the second one, but I forgave it because of the amazing emotional moments throughout. And in this one, it's just a bit harder to forgive because, I don't know, the highs of this movie weren't as high. So when I was just kind of sitting there waiting for things to get going, it got kind of annoying. However, I do love all the scenes with the Light Fury and Toothless. They're really great. Toothless and Hiccup's respective arcs of accepting that they're both happy without each other is perfectly paced and perfectly written. I love that. I think the villain is good, but not really anything special, and the actual climactic fight really didn't hit for me all that much. Like, it was fun, but it really wasn't anything crazy. But this movie still makes up for it with the amazing ending. When Hiccup and Astrid get married and they go to visit Toothless and this kid, that was the best thing ever. My favorite ending to any DreamWorks movie. So, because it sticks the landing so well for such an amazing franchise like this, I give this movie a ton of credit. It definitely, on its own, though, is slightly worse than 1 and 2, but still very good. A solid 8 out of 10. Abominable is fine, I guess. This movie could have been really good, but it's not. I feel like they tried really hard with this one, and I feel kind of bad shitting on it because I could really feel the effort being put in to make this one like an instant classic, you know, and it's just not. It's close though. I really like the main girl, honestly. She's one of the more underrated DreamWorks protagonists for me, and it was Yi. I think her learning to embrace her violin playing and accept her father's death along the way was really interesting. But that was kind of what held the movie together. I like all the scenes of her playing the violin are so awesome, and I wish there were more of them. And I do like the way it's paced, and I like the way how the Yeti actually affects her. The way it helps her realize kind of what she's been doing wrong, and all that stuff is very nice, but that's kind of it. This movie's not really that funny. There's some cute moments between Yi and Everest, and the climax is alright. I didn't hate that shit, and I was really glad that the movie actually ended with them splitting up. I was worried that they were gonna find a way to like stick together, and I was like, what? And that would have been really stupid. So I like the overall structure. This movie is like a skeleton of a really good movie. It's got all the good structural elements of a good movie, but it just doesn't have that interesting all the scenes in between the handful of good stuff. They're just super boring. They're not funny. The other kids aren't really that interesting at all. And the Yeti being able to bail them out of any situation with his magical powers is really lame. Yeah, there's just not a lot of good. It doesn't have any of the magic, you know? It's just got a lot of good elements, but they couldn't fit them all together to make a really great movie. And that's a shame, but just because of that, this movie it's gonna be one of their most forgotten movies. I had to look up some of the plot again just to remind myself, even though I watched this shit like a month ago. So, yeah, a low 6 out of 10, and I feel bad that I can't put it higher. Trolls World Tour is terrible. I hate this one. We're on a real bad streak here, aren't we? Actually, I guess not. It was How to Train Your Dragon 3. But, man, I really didn't like this one. Which I expected because it's Trolls. But I think this movie gets way too much of a pass for having a racism metaphor. Which, I'll give the movie credit, isn't handled terribly. It's actually handled decently well. I'm glad the message was, we're all different. Let's embrace that and not be mean to each other because of it. Instead of we're all, the same deep down. We're all humans, or trolls, I guess. We're all trolls. Let's all be nice to each other. I'm glad that wasn't the message. It was actually, we're all different and that's okay. Which is good. That's good to teach kids. But I don't think a racism metaphor makes a movie good when half the time is spent singing shitty pop songs. Like that is really boring, and it wasn't fun this time. It wasn't fun the first time either, but it was sure as fuck wasn't fun here. The story, aside from the racism part, is really generic and lame. It's just, stop the villain from getting all the things. Doesn't really develop any of the characters. Branch is basically cut in half. He doesn't really do anything. I liked the Anderson .Paak song that they did about racism and why, and revisionist history or whatever. That was the best part of the movie. I didn't hate that. So I'll give the movie credit for having a scene that I enjoyed. But man, I keep saying but man. Maybe I'll keep a counter of that. Yeah, I didn't love this one. I'm glad it exists, I guess, to teach kids that racism is bad, but that's kind of the only thing it does well, and that doesn't make it a good movie. So yeah, really hated this one, honestly. I guess I'm glad it exists, as I said. I feel bad I'm being kind of an asshole right now. I'm not in a very good mood. I don't know if that's evident. But I just thought this movie was super boring and bland and lame. And despite having an okay enough racism metaphor, that's all it's got going for it. So good for it. The Croods 2 is very fun and enjoyable. I think it fumbles a little bit in the second half, but honestly, for the first 45 minutes to an hour, I was really on board with this movie, and I thought it was very fun. The biggest things that this movie does that I like is that it doesn't try to be serious. As again, it's the sequel to The Croods. It really doesn't need to do anything crazy, and just keeping it in this one setting for the whole movie, and having this other family called the Bettermans who are really funny and enjoyable, is great. And so for the first half of the movie, it really just feels like an episode. It feels like Modern Family kind of, but the Croods edition, and it's a lot of fun. And besides the stupid middle kid who thinks looking out of a window is the TV, and that's his entire joke for the entire movie, and he never stops, and it was never funny a single time. That was fucking stupid. But besides that, I honestly was consistently laughing throughout the first half of this movie, and I love that they make the Betterman girl and Eep friends. I thought when she was bonding with Guy, I was like, oh man, here we go, it's a love triangle. But it wasn't. They were just buds throughout the whole movie, and her being in love with Guy never became a thing. Which was a really great subversion. Basically, up until the family dinner scene is so great because the movie spends all this time setting up emotional conflict after emotional conflict, and then it all boils together and it all comes to a head in this one scene, and it's a ton of fun. And then after that, it turns into a more generic adventure movie where they have to stop a villain, and there's a big action sequence, and it's still fun, but it definitely loses me a bit. When it could have just been about these people fucking around and coming to a resolution, I guess. But having this mini adventure in the second half of the movie is still decent enough because the characters are fun to hang with. But it's definitely not the best second half. But I still like it enough. It doesn't ruin the movie or anything. I'd still probably give this a high 6, low 7 out of 10. Definitely a very pleasant surprise. Spirit Untamed fucking sucks. I don't understand why this movie even exists. What was the point of making a cash grab sequel to Spirit? A movie that no one knows. Well, that's not exactly true, but I feel like if you're gonna ask 100 people to pick out a DreamWorks movie, no one is gonna pick Spirit. I don't think so. So why? I just like it's not like people don't like Spirit. It's got a following of me included. I enjoy it. But like, why? Like, this movie's not really even a sequel. It's like a spin-off, but just with Spirit in it. This is just the Horse Girl movie, but Spirit happens to be the horse. He doesn't even really do anything. He's not that important. He just bonds with the girl, and that's it. And the girl doesn't really have a character aside from her mom being dead, which, by the way, is one of the funniest death scenes I've ever seen in my life. It's the very first fucking scene in the movie where she's riding on a horse and she does this jump, and then it cuts to the dad in shock and it fades to black. You don't even see her die at all. It just fades to black, and you're just like, oh, she's dead now. And I genuinely had to I'm sorry I'm not playing it, but I genuinely had to rewind and be like, wait, did she just die? Did Jet just die? It was like that. It was really unclear. It was so fucking. It was wild. But that was the only funny bad part of the movie. The rest of the movie was just boring. The dad was almost interesting with his, overprotectiveness. Not a very unique character trait, but it's something. He's the only character in this movie that has something. All the other characters are just kind of one note. They're just like the funny girl, the sensible girl, and the horse girl that wants to be adventurous. And that's it. And it's just so boring, man. And like, not a lot happens. They eventually go on this adventure. They do something. I already forgot. I think they reunite Spirit with his family. That's nice. Yeah, so then she leaves Spirit at the end, which... okay, that doesn't really hook me at all, whatever. Yeah, I feel like this is the kind of movie that someone would see when they're like 7 and fall in love with it and then defend it. And I feel really bad that that person might exist and see this, and that's not good, but I don't know, man. This movie has nothing, and I feel really bad for saying that because, I don't know, I don't want to hate movies. I don't want to hate movies because I feel like they tried. This movie doesn't really feel like a cash grab because if they're going to make a cash grab sequel, they wouldn't make a sequel to Spirit. So I really do think they tried their best. But, yep, not it. It's a solid 3 out of 10. A low 3 out of 10, honestly. Borderline 2. The Boss Baby 2 is fucking terrible. We're really on a roll with these awful movies. Wow. I act in disbelief every time, and that's not good. It's kind of hard to start talking about a bad movie when legit everything about it is bad. The only thing I can think about this movie that's good is Princess Carolyn. She's in the movie, which is funny. Amy Sedaris, I think the talking baby, her talking baby is kind of funny. I get like the only funny things in the movie, not bad. There's an occasionally funny joke or two, but that's not really saying much because DreamWorks can make funny movies. They're decent at it. So having a couple good jokes really doesn't matter. And I didn't hate, I guess, the family, Tim's family, that isn't important at all. Oh, and I liked the songs. The little song that Tim's daughter sings. at the end. I liked that. That was cute. And that's it. That's all the good stuff. The actual story, all of that stuff that I mentioned is very minimal. All the actual story and the characters and literally and the main conflict, it's all stupid and boring and dumb. It's so lame. Like it just kind of feels like the first movie again. And by that I mean there's another guy that wants to exploit babies or something or throw off their power, I guess. And they gotta stop him. Tim and the Alec Baldwin baby gotta stop him. And it just feels so much more boring. I was so bored throughout this one, and it's like longer than most DreamWorks movies. It's an hour 47 rather than a clean hour and a half like most of them. So this one was even more of a chore to get through than the first Boss Baby. Yeah, I mean, this really felt like a cash grab as opposed to the Spirit Untamed. They're both terrible, but this one had like no soul either way. No, I mean, not that it's Spirit Untamed. I'm sorry. They both have no soul, but Spirit Untamed I felt like tried a little bit harder. This one just felt like trying to cash in on the meme that the Boss Baby became, but it was like a couple years late. Anyway, even when this movie came out, I was like, why are they making this? No one cares about the Boss Baby anymore. But apparently not, because they have like a show about the stupid Boss Baby either way. And aren't they gonna make another one of these? I'm pretty sure they are. That's terrible. I hope it's not as bad as this one, because again, the clip I'm playing right now of her singing Together We Stand is the name of the song. This is the only scene in the movie that I like. Like, you can just watch this clip on YouTube, and that's all you need. You don't need to watch this movie. It's terrible. One of the worst ones. I think it's probably still better than Shark Tale, but aside from that, this might be the worst DreamWorks movie. Bottom 3 for sure. Get it away from me. The Bad Guys is the definitive 6 out of 10 experience because it's got so many good elements peppered throughout it that kept me entertained throughout the whole thing. But the characters and the arcs they go through just really aren't very interesting at all. And that really kills a lot of the emotional weight that this movie could have had. This movie nails the vibe, I'll say. You know, the comic book-esque animation is really good. I like the bad guys themselves are a fun group. They've got good enough chemistry. They're fun to watch. And, heist movies are fun. It's never not enjoyable to watch a super elaborate plan come to fruition as the main character is narrating what they're going to be doing. Like, that's always fun. And so the heist scenes in this movie are really great. But pretty much every story decision or character-related decision is boring. Like, the twist villain is super lame. I thought we were done with twist villains. I thought we left those in the 2010s. But DreamWorks brought them back for this movie and Ruby Gillman, which we'll get to later. So that was really lame and dumb. And the arc is just, the bad guys learning to want to be good. Or the wolf, in particular, wants to be good, He doesn't want to be this bad guy. Because that's not exactly the plot of Shrek and kind of Megamind as well. And both movies did it way better. It's so predictable, and it sucks because this movie had so much going for it, but I'm just so bored of the emotional plot because I just know exactly where it's going to go at all points. And the third act breakup with the snake is super lame. The snake is just kind of a lame character, not gonna lie. So that was super dumb. The Crimson Paw, I hope no one discovered they were a furry because of her. But I love her theme song, and her reveal is pretty cool. She's one of the better characters, even though, obviously, her love arc with the wolf is incredibly predictable, of course, which sucks. Like, this movie has a great vibe. The score, in particular, is really good. So all the fight scenes and the heists and all that, they're great. They're a lot of fun. And so there's enough in this movie to make it enjoyable, I'd still say, but it's heavily flawed, and it's flawed enough to where I don't really want to watch it again, even though I wouldn't say it wasted my time. That's why I'd call it a 6 out of 10. I don't really want to watch this again, but I don't hate that it exists. I think it had a lot of good ideas, so I'd still say it was a positive use of an hour and a half. So if you have an hour and a half to kill, you could still watch this one. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is incredible, of course. Very shocking take. Yeah, I think this is one of the most talked about animated movies of the decade so far, and rightfully so. It's shockingly amazing. It's really weird how this movie just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think anyone expected this because, well, I mean, it's a sequel to a spin-off, and the spin-off was already really boring. I've said Puss in Boots 1 is the middest movie I think I've ever seen in my life. And a cash grab sequel to that, or seemingly a cash grab sequel, I mean, it's gonna be the other middest movie ever. That's what I would thought. That's what I thought. And then I saw all the reviews it was getting, and I thought, oh my god, maybe I should go watch it. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything unique to say about this movie. It's just crazy how it came out, and also how it came out in the midst of a bunch of mid and bad movies that we're still in. That we're gonna get to. I don't think DreamWorks has made a truly great movie besides this one in forever. Let me go back and check. Yeah, besides this and like How to Train Your Dragon 3, I feel like DreamWorks hasn't made anything really like 8 out of 10 or better in a while. But you know what? When they eventually do, because they're DreamWorks, with all their highs and lows, I'll be waiting. Because this movie's incredible, and I'm so glad that they put all of the effort they did into it, because yeah, it's amazing. But everyone knows it's amazing. I'm not really gonna go into it, because everyone already. I don't really have anything unique to say about it. So yeah, we hit an hour and a half, as I said I wouldn't do, but there's just so many movies, and I got so many thoughts about them. But we'll keep going. Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken might not be the worst DreamWorks movie, but it might be the most pathetic DreamWorks movie. It's kind of like the Chicago Bulls of DreamWorks movies. I hope someone understands that. It has enough the good things going for it to make it not a horrendously bad movie, but it also doesn't do anything interesting, really. It doesn't try anything new at all. It plays it so unbelievably safe, and it suffers for it, but has some objectively good elements that I can't call it bad, even though it kind of pisses me off more than most other DreamWorks movies. And that's just like the Chicago Bulls, but you know what? We're not going to talk about that. So, the good things that we got going on here is, one, this fight scene at the very end. It looks cool. It's got big-ass krakens fighting. That's fun. And I like how I think there was an occasional funny joke, like most DreamWorks stinkers. And the environments are nice enough. And I like how at the end, she's nervous about asking this guy to prom with the calculator, and then he asks her to dance with the calculator. I thought that was cute. And that's it. Now, normally, after I say that's all the good stuff, I would go on to list the horrendously awful things about this movie, but there aren't that many. It's just got so many hallmarks of animated movies that are annoying. It's just this girl who's different from everybody else and wants to be normal, and she's trying to hide her morphing thing, like in Turning Red, even though Turning Red did it better. I think Turning Red's underrated, by the way, just saying. And then her friends are also super boring. They're like, oh, we love you, and oh man, I hope that guy likes you. Maybe you should ask him out. And she's like, no, I don't want to. I'm too nervous to do that. And then the friend is like, but he so totally likes you, and you're the main character of the movie, which means you gotta do it. And man, is it boring. Man, is it boring to watch. And then on top of that, you got maybe the worst twist villain in anything ever. And that's a super high bar to cross. It might still be better than The Incredibles 2 lady. But it was genuinely the first twist villain that starts as a villain and then makes you think, oh wait, maybe they're not a villain, and then bam, never mind. It was so stupid. It was the first twist villain where I genuinely had to question if it was supposed to be a twist. And I think it is. I think it actually might be. And it certainly didn't work. And that would have been that would have been the only thing this movie could have done uniquely, was have the girl who, it's not even that unique anyway, have the girl, the adversary girl, actually be a normal, nice person. That would have been cool. But no, we can't do that. We have to stick to every cliche we can. I'm sorry I'm being so bitter about this one in particular. It's really not as bad as a lot of the movies that I've been talking about. It's definitely a 4 out of 10. Not a 3, not a 2. It's just normal bad, because, you know, it doesn't do anything egregious, but I think because of that, I am more annoyed by it. I'm more annoyed by a movie that doesn't try anything. Even though I will still rate it, higher than a movie that tries and fails. Um, I get really annoyed by this movie in particular. A lot of the decisions it makes are really annoying for a movie that came out in 2023, and not 2017. So, yeah, really not. And Ruby Gilman herself is a really boring protagonist. Just like, oh man, I want to be normal, but what's going on? Why is my body like this? Well, okay. It's not. This movie isn't a puberty metaphor either. Well, not metaphor. This movie doesn't try to, you know, do any of that stuff that Turning Red did. It's not a copy of Turning Red. It's just it does the same story beat and then doesn't add anything interesting to it. So, really don't like this one. As you can tell, I've talked about it for 5 minutes, which is way too long for a movie that has almost nothing to offer. It's crazy. So, I wouldn't recommend it. I'm sure some people would enjoy it. I feel like I am definitely much more harsh on it than most. But yeah, no, I don't like it. I'm sorry, I feel kind of bad for saying all that, but whatever. Trolls band together is shockingly okay. I can't believe it. I can't believe one of these Trolls movies ended up being decent. Maybe decent. I don't know. It's still pretty boring, and there's still a lot of songs that I don't care about, which is very hallmark of Trolls. But there are a lot of decisions this movie makes that I actually liked. One of those being actually focusing it on Branch, who I think is the character with the most potential, and also having Poppy. I think Poppy and Branch's relationship is the most interesting out of all of them. It's the most relationship. The fuck. Poppy and Branch's relationship is the most interesting that it has been in any of these movies. There we go. Yeah, I just think it's nice voice crack. I just think it's really well. It's just nice. They don't have any forced conflict. They actually support each other decently well throughout the movie. It's just a nice little thing, and I'm glad they don't really go through any stupid cliches that I feel like happens when, in a sequel, when at the end the characters get together. In the next movie they probably have some cliches. I don't really feel that with them in this movie, and that's good. I like the Kenan Thompson troll being the third in command, as opposed to the stupid James Corden guy, because that is one hell of an upgrade, because James Corden sucks ass. And I also like the villains. They're fun. They're nice. Can't believe you get Amy Schumer to play a villain, and it works, because she sucks. You get Amy Schumer and James Corden in this movie, I'm pretty sure. Arguably the two most universally disliked people in the world are in the same movie, and it still is good. Because actually, Amy Schumer does a good job being a villain. I just think they're decently fun antagonists. I wish the Anderson .Paak troll had more things to do. He's barely in this one. But yeah, it's just a fun story. And Branch's arc of, of coming to terms with his family trauma and all that. His backstory is actually interesting, and he's well written. His arc is well written throughout the movie, and that's crazy. And the ending climax is fun too. Honestly, there are a lot of good things, a lot more good things about this movie that I'm realizing just talking about it. This movie's maybe even a 6 out of 10. Honestly, I didn't hate it. I'm glad it exists. Oh, and they brought back the Zooey Deschanel goblin and the other guy goblin. He's not born. But I like the Zooey Deschanel troll. She's cool. Poppy's sister is nice. There's nothing really great about this movie, and there's still a lot of boring moments that I didn't like. That's keep it from being actually good. But a lot of the story decisions that were made are actually good, and that's really impressive for a Trolls movie, and I'd give it a lot of credit for that. So, if you like Trolls, you really only need to watch this one. Orion and the Dark is pathetically mid. Another one of these. Which sucks because I thought this one had potential. It's a cute enough concept. It doesn't feel very unique, but it could have been done well. I like this style of animation is new, and it's always nice to see new animation styles. But it's just an annoying kid who's scared of something, gets taken on a magical journey, and then learns to be not scared of that. And it goes about this process in a unique way, but I just didn't like the decisions it made. Like all the time travel bullshit, I don't fucking get it. He meets his like daughter in the future. Maybe I'm not remembering very well, but this movie had such a weird way to get to its resolution. Oh yeah, and the whole movie is framed as him telling it as a story to his daughter, which is pretty lame in my humble fucking opinion because then you know that it worked out. There's no stakes anymore. The scenes of adult Orion and his daughter are nice. They're actually the best parts of the movie. They're decent. I like those, but yeah, it really deflates all of the tension. And like the climax happens in a dream. There's so many weird things this movie tries, and I don't like it. Well, no, I don't hate it. It tried. It really tried, and I don't want to give it some credit for that. And it has some good scenes, but I really was mostly bored and kind of forgot. It's very forgettable. Didn't really think that much of it, so that's kind of where I'm at. Pretty mid. Not a great movie. Sorry. And finally, we reach Kung Fu Panda 4, which is super mid again. Another one of these, man. Yeah, there's not much to say about Kung Fu Panda 4 because it's just very nothing. Just very nothing. This is just a movie. It's just a freaking movie. At the end of the day, it's just basketball. But yeah, I'm so annoyed at just how many movies I have not a lot to say because they're just so average. Like this movie does everything that you'd think in a Kung Fu Panda movie. It's got Po. I like the idea of Po having to move on and teach somebody else to become the new Dragon Warrior. That's actually a really great way to further the story. Um, but the movie barely focuses on that. It's just Poe and Aquafina going on another journey to stop the villain. Which, to be fair, normally he doesn't have to go on a journey to stop the villain, I guess. But it's still boring because the Aquafina character is super duper duper boring. And the villain is super duper duper boring. Yeah, really great film criticism here. The villain is super boring. It's just the Kung Fu Panda has lofty standards for its villains, and the chameleon doesn't do that shit at all because she doesn't do anything on her own. I think again, and isn't her only motivations are just like take over the world. She doesn't have an interesting backstory at all. She just kind of wants to. She just kind of wants power. Okay. She doesn't really do anything interesting besides morph into other people. She doesn't do anything interesting on her own. And then what? Poe is still, a nice, charming character, but Shifu doesn't do much. Uwe's not in the movie. The Furious Five don't usually add much, but they're still better to have in the movie, but they're not here. Tai Lung isn't interesting. Shen isn't interesting. None of the villains they bring back are themselves. Poe doesn't really learn anything that interesting about himself or Kung Fu as a whole. It's just kind of looks like you're gonna be my apprentice, Aquafina lady. Aquafina Wolf, or whatever the fuck that is. It's just so bare bones, and that really it's so disappointing for a Kung Fu Panda movie. Because these movies are generally above that kind of thing. But this is the first one that really just felt soulless, and because it's not a bad movie. It's not awful. It doesn't do anything awful. It just kind of does the bare minimum for a Kung Fu Panda movie, and that annoys me because Kung Fu Panda movies are supposed to be better than that. Especially after Puss in Boots 2 was so amazing. The fight scenes in this movie are just very generic again. They're worse than the first movies, and that's not good. So I, again, really disappointed with this one. We're ending on a sour note after this long hour and 45 minutes journey. Yeah, sorry, but not feeling it again. Alright, so that's the end of reviewing every DreamWorks movie. Thank you for sticking around this far if you did. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, because this was a lot. Despite how upset I got throughout this video and all of the lame movies at the end, I really did enjoy this marathon. Not as much as the Pixar one, but I definitely don't regret watching these movies. I think it was good. It was fun. Just want to reaffirm that because DreamWorks can make some shit that I had to watch, but they can make some good stuff too, some great stuff. And I'm glad that I stuck through the shitty shit in order to get to the really great movies they made because there's a lot of both, and that's all right. So I definitely had fun watching all of these. And I'm gonna do Ghibli next, which is going great so far, and I think it's gonna keep going great because they make good shit consistently. But so I'm gonna put a ranking up on the screen. Right now I have the bottom tier. This is the middle tier right over here. So just take a gander at that. Hopefully there's nothing egregious on this one, especially given after I've talked about all of them. So, and then here is the tippy top, the top 11. I think it's a good ranking. I understand with big rankings like this, people are bound to disagree, so that's alright, but I think I like this ranking and I'm happy with it, so. But I think that's the end. I think I've gotten everything. I think I've said everything I need, so thank you for listening to me, and goodbye.